Hello, and a big warm welcome to the EDRM Global Webinar channel. My name is Mary Mack. I'm the CEO at EDRM. Today's webinar is a collaboration with EDRM's trusted partner, Beagle. The webinar event is entitled, How to Get GenAI Benefits Without Getting into Trouble. Our faculty experts are Sergey Demyaev, Monica Harris, and Todd Itami. We welcome your questions and feedback in the console. Questions will be answered both during and at the end of the webinar. And this webinar will be available for replay at your convenience for the next quarter, as are all of our EDRM webinars. Kaylee Wallstad, EDRM's Chief Strategy Officer, is here with us. Can you please share what resources are available today, Kaylee?
Of course, but before we do that, I have to say I've been so looking forward to introducing our brand new, shiniest trusted partner, Beagle, to our EDRM community. And we have a great group of presenters on today, so thank you so much for joining us. And we're also loving our EDRM's On24 platform with so many more ways for you, our audience, to engage. If you look to the right of your screen, you'll see your console. There's a question mark icon, and if you click it, this is where you can type in your questions for today's faculty, and we highly encourage you to do so. The paperclip icon is for related content, and if you click on it, you'll see today's resources carefully curated just for you. There's a great link to read Beagle's insightful article entitled The AI Revolution in Legal Practice, Why Law Firms Must Adapt Now. There's also a link to check out EDRM's trusted partner Beagle's outstanding platform and much more. And then there's also a link to listen to Beagle's founder, Sergey, as he joined Mary and I on our Illumination Zone podcast. And it's 20 minutes of fireside chat and outstanding discussion. And are you headed to Legal Week? You need to be sure to drop by Beagle's booth, 3303 in America's Hall 2. There's a link to click to learn what Beagle's up to at Legal Week, and we hope that you'll stop by and give them a big hello. You're not going to Legal Week? Never fear. There's a link to schedule a meeting for a customized demo with the experts at Beagle and take a look for yourself. And up next on EDRM Global's webinar channel, tomorrow, March 20th, important e-discovery case law decisions for March. Be sure to save your seat for this iconic monthly series now in season 5. And then just like Zoom, you'll see the smiley face emoji. If you click on it, there's many more reactions that you can click on during the webinar, and we highly encourage you to engage with them. We're having a lot of fun with them on this platform. The Twitter bird is for social media. Click it and follow EDRM and Beagle on LinkedIn. Back to you, Mary.
Thanks, Kaylee. And all opinions expressed here are our faculty's own, not those of their firm or clients, and no legal advice is being provided. So our faculty is absolutely stellar today. We've got Sergey. Sergey Demyaev is Beagle's CEO and technical co-founder. He's a serial entrepreneur and AI expert. After earning his PhD in machine learning, he co-founded an AI-driven image processing startup later acquired by Snap Incorporated. And at Snap, his team had numerous successful product launches that helped revive user growth and enhance engagement. After that experience, he founded Beagle, an AI-native e-discovery platform that reimagines e-discovery and legal investigations using cutting-edge AI capabilities. Beagle aims to enhance efficiency by automating tedious legal workflows, enabling legal professionals to focus on the strategic and analytical aspects of their work. Its mission is to make e-discovery cruelty-free by eliminating frustration and streamlining the legal process through AI-driven solutions. With him is Monica Harris, the founder and principal consultant of Consult Harris Collective. Monica has decades of experience in the development, implementation, and training of proprietary software for e-discovery service providers such as KL Discovery and Concilio. And before she joined her last company, Celebrate, she worked with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, where she oversaw policy and procedure curation, enterprise solution rollout, and training for enterprise solution. Monica is an active leader and mentor in the e-discovery community and has lectured on trending topics at e-discovery at American University, Georgetown University, and she is the co-project trustee for the EDRM text message metadata project. Monica has previously served as assistant director of the DC chapter of Women in E and is a board member of the Masters Conference. She currently serves as immediate past president of ACED's DC chapter and is a member of our EDRM Global Advisory Council. We also have with us Todd Itami. He is the Director of Artificial Intelligence and E-Discovery Solutions at Covington. And in that role, Todd advises leading global companies on the application of machine learning to legal and business tasks, electronic discovery, information governance, and strategic software development. Todd has successfully led e-discovery efforts and resolved legal challenges in cases ranging from small private disputes to some of the largest litigations and investigations in U.S. history. And with a clear understanding of both legal and technical aspects, Todd provides comprehensive guidance to his clients from the intricate details of digital forensics, computer hardware, data preservation, to traditional legal tasks such as negotiation, briefings, depositions, and trials. He can address even the most intractable legal technical problems. And without further ado, Sergey, will you please take the reins?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Mary, for introductions. And let's start. So before we go forward, I would like to talk about the most commonly used terms, because I think there is a lack of clarity about what they mean. So first of all, generative AI. This is a set of tools capable of generating content based on user requests. This is a very broad term, and large language models is a special subset of such tools which generates text as a response with a specific architecture of it. Another term is RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, which is an application of large language models to a custom set of textual data typically. The difference here is that when you prompt a large language model, you get a response based on what the model was trained on. But in case of RAG, you get a response based on the external set of documents, external set of information which the LLM has access to, either via prompt or via other ways like for example, prompting, like augmenting this prompt using search. And in this case, you get a response based on the results of processing this information, which is not available for an LLM during training stage. And another term is AI agents, which is also very popular. This is a case when an LLM or any other AI is not just generating a response, but it generates the commands which it can execute. Therefore you get like an autonomous agent which is capable of making decisions for itself and executing those decisions. Okay, let's move forward and talk about what is special about generative AI. So typically, like the AI which used to be non-generative before was implemented as in the format of predicting a single number most of the time. So it meant that we had some input which could be an image or could be text or audio or pretty much anything like time series, for example. And as a result, you were solving a classification problem, like is it, for example, does this image contain certain object in it? And you would get a probability score typically for that. It could be one score for yes or no decisions, or it could be multiple scores if it is a multiple classification problem. But anyway, it was like a single number or set of numbers. And in this case, these models, they were mostly used for classification problems, ranking, and TAR is an example of that. Opposite to that, generative AI is able to generate arbitrary outputs, meaning that you can prompt it using text and get an image as a response. An image is like a huge set of numbers decoding this image, which opened like a whole set of new possibilities for generative AI, like text image generation from text, like ChatGPT applications. And another interesting aspect of this is that generative AI can be applied to tasks with more than one correct answer, which is an example, for example, for summary, document summary, or again, image generation, or ChatGPT responses, and so on. And if we talk about applications to e-discovery, again, we can roughly divide all the tasks to single correct response tasks, or they are often kind of information contraction tasks where you get a large volume of input and small volume of an output. The most common example is, of course, classification problem, where you feed the documents and you get a response like a yes or no, or you extract certain information from it. The other category is document generation or other generation tasks, where your prompt might be less than what you get as a response. And this could be like generation of briefs. This could be generation of some reports, generation of presentations, and so on and so forth. And if we talk about non-text generation tasks, this could be text to SQL query generation as well, code generation, and others. Okay, and with that, let me pass this to Monica, and she will talk about the roadblocks.
Thank you, Sergey. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Before we talk about some roadblocks to GenAI adoption, let's set the stage with some facts, because we have some stats that were recently presented to the industry by eDiscovery Today by way of the University of Florida Law eDiscovery Conference. And they really help set the landscape for what some of the roadblocks to GenAI adoption are. So at the University of Florida Law Conference, there were about 6 polls that were conducted that polled the audience about GenAI, and here's where we found. So when asked where you are on your GenAI journey, I would say more than half said that they were curious but hadn't explored its application yet. But you can see for the remainder of the poll that individuals were either actively using GenAI, they were using it for document review and pilot, or they're considering using it this year. So that's really great momentum that we have in terms of GenAI adoption overall. When asked if lawyers think if GenAI adoption will happen at a higher rate than before, we see that a majority are saying yes, it's definitely going to take off, which is also very promising. When asked what areas of legal work do you believe that GenAI will most benefit, no surprise there, document review and analysis. But asked how likely are you to use GenAI with eDiscovery data for something other than traditional review, we see very likely or likely and really at the head of the pack. So that really kind of opens up the areas that you could use GenAI, some of which we just heard Sergey talk about previously. So all of that is a perfect lead on to what the actual barriers to Gen AI adoption are. So leading the pack is a lack of understanding and knowledge of Gen AI, which is followed very closely by data privacy concerns and then high implementation costs. when asked to rank the challenges of adopting AI in legal practices, everything, the kitchen sink came along with that ranking. But at the top of that list was trust in AI generated results. So now that we have an idea of what those roadblocks to AI adoption are, let's take a look at what we can do to get around them, starting with that lack of understanding or knowledge of Gen AI overall. Most of you, if not all of you, have joined this webinar so that you can readily understand what is happening with Gen AI. So generally, fundamental knowledge of Gen AI is readily available. If not through an EDR webinar like the one that you're attending now, then through the University of Florida Law Conference that we just talked about, that had the 6 polls that we presented. It could be in the form of eDiscovery Today, which reported on all of those polls, sharing that information. I know a lot of us, it is March, so a lot of us next week will be at Legal Week. And at Legal Week, there are 6 sessions and workshops that are going to be presented that have Gen AI. Maybe you don't travel for conferences, but you're fortunate to live in a city where the conference comes to you, like the Masters Conference. So in Miami or Dallas, which has taken place this year, the Masters Conference has averaged 3 to 4 sessions per conference on Gen AI. But leading the pack is JD Supra, where this webinar will be syndicated. This month alone, in the month of March in 2025, JD Supra has published over 34 articles on Gen AI from US-based authors. So if you are looking to expand your knowledge and your understanding of Gen AI, it is readily available, not just with the sources that are on this slide, but generally throughout the industry. When we think about trust in AI-generated results being one of the roadblocks to Gen AI adoption, that can be overcome with transparency in your Gen AI solution. So what does that mean? You can have audit trails for Gen AI. And when we say audit trails, we don't mean the audits that your IT department might request if you call in with a problem, not the audit logs. Audit here means that when your Gen AI is making a determination about a document, even when it's pulling, say, entities from a document, that it leads you not only back to the document, but the text that helped it come to its decision. So complete transparency about how it made its decision. In addition to that, if you are conducting a proof of value, a proof of concept, or even a pilot, being able to do that pilot or that proof of concept side by side with a case where you've already had manual review so that you can compare those results. And when you're comparing the results of a proof of concept, some of the measurable outcomes that you want to make sure that you present so that you can justify the case to leadership are the reduction in time spent on review, the accuracy of the AI as compared to manual review, and also the cost savings that comes with the reduced review hours that are spent on lower level tasks. But last but certainly not least, really to trust in your AI generated results, you want to have humans in the loop. Meaning that before you make any final calls or before that work product goes out the door, that there is a human or a manual reviewer or reviewer who takes a look at the work product to verify that it's correct. When thinking about the roadblock of high implementation costs, there are businesses who are using Gen AI to cut and maximize the impact. I think Sergey talked a lot about that in terms of his use cases with your first pass review or with your privilege automation. You can also do that with document prioritization as well. But when you are using AI for that first pass, that privilege automation, or maybe that document prioritization, what that allows you to do is shift costs without increasing them. So you can bring AI on board and you can shift costs from some of the more heavier lift that we see with costs in eDiscovery, which is the manual review itself, to the AI. And overall, what this does is it allows firms to scale because of the cost shift, because you can take in more work without increasing headcount. And when we think about the roadblock of privacy and security, which in the current time is pretty outstanding, whether we're thinking about the security of the infrastructure that the platform sits in, or whether we're thinking about the privacy that belongs to the individuals themselves. Your private cloud deployments are going to be very important there in terms of making sure that you have the security that you need for the platform. But in a lot of these platforms, simply because of the nature of what we do, there is a lot of pertinent information there. So sanitizing it, making sure that you're redacting it before you give it to the AI model is also a best practice, along with controlled data access, meaning not everyone needs access to your GenAI. So ensuring that only the experts who are using it and verifying its results are the ones who have access. And last but not least, and possibly most importantly, zero data retention, meaning that the input of the AI is not being used for training. Now, those are some of the roadblocks to GenAI and how you can get around them. But Todd, would you like to share with our audience some of the ways that GenAI can get you into trouble?
Sure, I will happy to tell you how to get in trouble with this. Beginner's guide. No, okay, so this is a little bit of a roadmap here, kind of how we're going to think through this, ways GenAI can get you into trouble. And we're going to, talk a little bit about the rules, kind of which sorts of errors or which times, is it in the discovery context, the most sensitive, and then, talk about confidentiality and hallucinations and being expensive. And, I look at generative AI like any other information technology. I think in some ways, this new technology has came out and we have seen it as, as lawyers, as a very novel thing. It's big, it's new, it's scary, and in some ways, kind of had a bit of, we wiped our minds of how we treat other data sources, but sources of information. And it's no different than any other tool. Our current kind of levers on controlling Gen AI are no different than any other information source. We're going to treat it the same. So I like to think about it kind of like, okay, how do we treat information sources now? What controls do we put in place for those? And then how do those apply to Gen AI rather than looking at it as some sort of, new, scary, crazy monster that is going to result in the disclosure of all client information and lead us astray. Okay, here we are. So first thing is rules. We're going to talk about rules. This is a very cool map that Ropes has on their website. You should go check it out. There's some good stuff on AI there. Basically, these are the states that have some sort of standing order in place with respect to generative AI. Most of the people or most of the courts who are talking about it say something like, yo, if you're going to use this to make production determinations, you need to disclose it. So in that way, it looks a lot like TAR, and you should talk to counsel with it, to figure out, okay, what are the disclosure obligations for any particular use case. But this gives you an idea, so it's kind of on the radar of courts out there. And of course, we have the federal rules and the model rules. The federal rules, Rule 11, Rule 26, those are saying, hey, you're on the hook, attorneys, if you sign a paper and you make representations in that paper about information there, and you happen to have got that information from Gen AI, well, guess what? You're still on the hook for it. So it's no different than any other data source. And again, the model rules, you see there at the bottom, Formal Opinion 512 from the ABA does a really good job of walking through kind of like, okay, here's Gen AI and here's our existing framework, and this is how to think about it. And I really like that way of thinking. And I think it's very helpful for lawyers to think of Gen AI in a way that is, saying like, all right, how does this fit in our normal framework? How would we normally treat this? But it's good with that, not treating it like this new, crazy alien spacecraft that showed up on our doorstep. And the usual suspects apply. You have the duty to know how this works. You have a duty to guard your client's confidential information. You need to tell your client how and if you're using this stuff, and you need to be very transparent about the way that the client's being charged for it. If there's any extra charges or something like that. But just like any other tool, the rules apply. So great. So let's talk a little bit about misclassification, and this is kind of with discovery really where the rubber meets the road on GenAI or TAR or any other tool you're going to use that is going to supplant human review. And that really is a piece. The key in all this, of course, is whether there are production determinations being made with the tool that are independent of human review. So, for example, if you're just using technology-assisted review to prioritize documents, but humans are going to lay eyes on every single document, well, most lawyers would tell you you probably don't have a duty to disclose that because you just reordered things. And if anything, it probably improved quality. It's the same, with GenAI. As long as it's not making a production determination, for the most part, you can worry less about it because it's not just supplanting the normal attorney review. And same thing goes for privilege. If you're using GenAI to make privilege calls, and that will result in withholding, sure, it'll be logged, but again, you should probably start thinking about disclosing it in that case. Same with whatever you're using it for. If you're using it for junk identification, if you're using it for some sort of analytic purpose that will result in documents getting withheld from the other side, and humans not making those manual determinations, that needs to be disclosed. For things that you don't need to disclose, probably ask your lawyers. Quality control tasks, if you're asking it to kind of like put a second set of eyes on it. Did we miss anything here? And then going and reviewing those documents. Okay, it's just additive, it's just supplemental, and likely, you don't need to disclose that, and it's like a lower risk category of data. Same thing with, it's making summaries, doing things that are, kind of look like analytics. You're trying to gain information about the data set or build facts. Those are the sorts of use cases where we don't have to be quite as strict with them. And so with this, in the solution box down there on the slide, I like to think about, starting with tasks that are lower risk. If you're beginning to use these tools, as lawyers, we have a tendency to be like, what is this, like a one-shot solution? When can I like push the button and eliminate review, be done with it? And that kind of like direct replacement for TAR or direct replacement for human review, that for me, it's like skipping ahead a little bit. You should think about like, okay, what value can this add in between point A and point B? And these kind of lower risk use cases of quality control or fact development or those things, those are the things that you can do to start off with. You don't have to start off with a complete responsiveness review. We still have yet to see cases, although I'm aware of investigations before the government and civil litigations where these tools are being relied upon as the primary and exclusive way to review for responsiveness, but we still have yet to see it challenged in court and to have a court opine on it. So the kind of use cases that are short of that, those are the ones that you can start with. They're the lower risk ones, and it's easier to become more familiar with how your particular GenAI product works in that sense. So coming over to the best and the kind of the scariest for us attorneys is that hallucinations. This thing is going to say all sorts of crazy words and do crazy things. And there are, you can go take a look at the studies out there. I'm kind of a sucker for an academic paper on hallucinations and how they're testing these things. And yeah, it's real. It happens. And in my use of the technology, and I use it all day, every day. I catch errors all the time. Sometimes changing a number, one digit, or you never know. But there's a golden rule here that is very helpful, and it's something that's deeply embedded in legal ethics to begin with. And it's that you should scale your scrutiny proportional to the task. That's it. Kind of, you're looking at the task you're doing as an attorney, and you're going to scrutinize the information source more from one task to another task. And we already do this, whether the information source is a junior associate, whether it's a search in a case law database, something like that. If it's unimportant, or if it's a quick look, or getting an idea, or some use case that isn't making representations to the outside world, or maybe not even to a client, okay, that doesn't need as much scrutiny. But if you're going to put words in a brief, or go make representations to opposing counsel, okay, that seems like it needs more scrutiny. And it's the same as a case law search. So there's a name for, if you're writing a brief and you go plug one search in to Lexis or Westlaw and hit roll with it, and then trust those results, and that's it. That's called malpractice. That's what the name for that is. And it's just the same with GenAI. If you kind of like put your trust in this one shot thing, but it's really important, like identifying these cases, chances are you should kind of come back and add scrutiny to that. So you need to turn on your normal lawyering critical nature. You need to turn on your normal attention to nuance when using these tools. And if you do that, then you can get past these dangers of kind of hallucinations or omissions from the data. If it's important, if you're doing a text extraction task, well, then validate it, then spot check it, go in and sample it, make sure it's important. Are these data points, are you just trying to get an idea? Maybe you have a stack of 100,000 complaints, underlying complaints, and you want to identify something about a product. When did this product, how are people saying that the product hurt them? When was their first exposure to the product? Well, if you're in an early cases assessment and you just want to get a general idea, all right, maybe then use a cheap model to go through, review everything, and give you kind of a high-level view of what these complaints say, because really it's early case assessment, doesn't need to be precise. Now, if you get down the road and you're building facts, or you're working with an expert, or you're making representations opposing counsel, okay, we care a lot more, about how those facts are coming out of there, how that data is being extracted from GenAI. So again, we're scaling the scrutiny proportionally with the importance of the task. Disclosure of confidential information, same thing. It's GenAI uses the same security standards, transmission protocols. All those things are there of any other SaaS service you're using. And so we're looking at it with your security people, with your teams who are analyzing how secure is this stuff. It's not different from an InfoSec security than any other SaaS application. Now, there's been a lot of attention focused on but is the LLM provider, are they kind of like spying and taking my information? And that's where the zero retention comes in. It's just, you're looking for a clear privacy agreements where they say, hey, everything I'm inputting and everything that comes out of this thing, you're not saving those. Not only are you not directly logging them, but you're also not learning from my use of it and incorporating that back into the model. And that process, you have to, it doesn't just happen, with the neural networks. That has to be programmed in. The company is making a choice to log your data and incorporate it back into the model. And so to the extent you're opting out of that, great. You should definitely look at that. And that's no different than anything else. No different than if you're going to a vendor and they're going to host your documents in a common, document review database. Well, you should also seek such zero tension, agreements with them that you're not going to use my data to do your own development. It's no different than that. And you always want to train lawyers. Hey, don't go put confidential information into boxes on the internet and copy and paste. Just like you wouldn't go slam something into a translation tool casually on the internet. Wow, that would result. You're potentially disclosing your client's confidential information. Same controls, same scrutiny, and the key to look for is this zero data retention with GenAI there. Okay, last one. Surprisingly high service costs. This is like, hey, we've heard this is expensive stuff, and we're worried about applying it, using it, that it's going to cost a lot. And depending, well, first, I noticed that, prices are falling, and the difference in cost between the Cadillac model and maybe a distilled model or a mini model are very different. And so there is some room there. But the one thing I love about GenAI is this is a review process, unlike TAR, that you can validate before you use it, that you can validate before the run. You can have an idea of how well it's working without pushing it out to all the documents, and that kind of nuance there is important. And so you would kind of start small and work your way out with the documents. And so it's not like TAR, where we need many examples to create comparative values. And it's, the P in GPTs, it's pre-trained. And that's the beauty of it, is that it's objectively bringing information from other training to make a qualitative determination. Sure, there are variations of these models, but the bottom line here is, hey, if, you start with 5, 10, 20, 25 documents and kind of work your way out and get a good idea if it's working. And if it's not working, then don't run it on 100,000 documents. You can wait. And that's the beauty of this technology, as opposed to, kind of thinking through a TAR 1 process where you're like, okay, well, let's get going. And you kind of run these training rounds, and maybe it's working, maybe it's not. Try something different, start over. This, you could start small with literally dollars, of testing, and refine your prompts and get to a place where it's working and it's doing what you want to do. And the amount of effort you're putting into that, again, depending on the task, if it's something small fact building task, if it's just a QC, kind of a belt and suspenders task, maybe you're refining less or more. But I will give you to just kind of give you an idea of how this has worked. How it's worked well for me is, you're creating some initial prompt. That might mean you're feeding it a review protocol, you're feeding it descriptions, and the level of detail you're feeding it on that prompt. It's GenAI is very, for now, prompt sensitive. So that means that some prompts work better than others. It's better at some facts than others, at giving you answers, and that sometimes is counterintuitive. You might not be able to predict that it's really good or not good at something. And so start with an initial prompt, pick a small set of documents, a diverse set of documents, document types. You could cluster and sample from the clusters. You could just grab 10 that you know about. And it's better if you choose things that are already labeled, meaning, let's say you're searching for an issue. It's a case about dogs, and you really want to find the documents that talk about the blue heelers. Like, well, if you have a few of those documents labeled as blue heeler, then when you run your prompt over them, you'll be able to quickly see the results if they match the labels. But the nice thing is, as you go about this process of adding more documents and changing the prompt to be more accurate, to get at what you're going with, every piece of review you do there, you'll be adding, human-coded ground truth to each document. So if you start out with 10 documents, you try your prompt, you review those 10. Okay, you have 10 documents worth of code, of coded documents. And then you do 100. Okay, you have 100. And so then every time when you refine your prompt, you can kind of look back at it and say, like, how does this match the past 100? You don't have to go re-review them again. You already know the answers, and you can just simply see if the new outputs from the model match the answers. And of course, in that process, one thing we were talking about the other day, Monica pointed out a very good point, like, hey, in this process, you're going to refine your protocols. You're going to do all the great things with engaging in the data set, understanding the data better, that normally happens when you would, for example, sample a document set before a manual document review. And so it's a pretty natural process. It's fast because it's only running on a few documents. And before you get going, before you go send it to run through all 100,000 documents, what's going to happen? So you could go and sample, take a random sample, 95.5 type random sample, and review 400 or send it through for 400 randomly selected documents of the universe, and then go see how it performs before you send it through all the documents. So it's not like tar in that way, in that, you have to complete the process and then validate. The weights are the weights of the model. And if you run it through right now or a little bit later, as long as, the model hasn't changed, the results will be the results. And so it's a huge advantage with this software that we can kind of get a preview of how it's going to look and how it's going to work and if it's going to validate. And, certainly, there on step 5 it says, if necessary. There are so many tasks that you could have this stuff do that you don't need to validate it. It's a supplemental task. You're asking it a question. And I think that, to close out my thoughts here, there are so many processes in the practice of law that we have based on the increasingly flawed assumption that we have a limited amount of human time and a limited amount of analysis capability. And GenAI is really collapsing that. It is opening up a whole bunch of new tasks, a whole bunch of new insights into the data that we just couldn't get at before, that we kind of, as lawyers, as thinking about e-discovery, facts that we would develop or questions we would ask the documents that never even crossed our mind, because it wouldn't make sense to have a human go through and re-review 100,000 documents for that. Well, now, today, 2025, you could send those 100,000 documents through an expensive model or through a cheap model and get some information back and have a pretty good idea of its accuracy through sampling and statistics. And it just I'm very excited for, once we're kind of moving those assumptions out of the way and thinking creatively about what the data can tell us, because now we don't have to kind of think about that human investment. Those barriers are coming down and costs are coming down, and it's there's lots of cool stuff in the future. And so I think it's back to you, Sergey. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Todd. That was a great explanation. And now let me talk about how Beagle specifically can help to address these risks. So first of all, jobs is the concept that enables users of Beagle to apply AI to the document review tasks that they have. And as you can see from this slide, users can choose if they want the documents to be reviewed by Beagle, meaning that we would apply large language models to that, or they can, in a similar way, assign these review tasks to users, to contractors or other specialists, and do the review process as they typically do that. And you have all the flexibility to choose which documents in particular needs to be reviewed, including selection of the data sets, selections of the filters, applying any Boolean search, and so on and so forth. And in this way, you don't have to pay a lot for your review process if you know that the documents you need to review are only the specific ones, and you have all the capabilities to narrow down your review process to only those ones. The next step is specifying the review task itself, and you can do this using natural language. As you can see on the screenshots, you only need to specify two things: the name of what we call the output, the field that would be populated, and the corresponding instruction. And this instruction is again written in natural language. You are able to provide any necessary information you need here. And importantly, you can iterate through these instructions. You can adjust it as needed according to what Todd just described by running this on a smaller subset of documents, adding some additional information to that, or adjusting as needed. And you can add up to 5 outputs in a single review task. More is not recommended to do, but yeah, this is how you can do that. And the power of Beagle is that you are not really limited to only the specific review tasks, but rather you can choose the type of the output. Of course, yes or no type of questions are the most important ones and the most demanded. But you can also choose the single choice option, where you would provide a set of options by yourself, and and the Beagle would select one of those options for you. It could be text if you, for example, need to generate a summary, or you need to generate a translation, or any other textual type of response. It can be date, whole number, decimal, or it can be even a set of nested fields. And this is how the result would look like if, for example, you requested the binary tasks. We would provide you a table with the columns filled by yes or no values. And for each of those, you would not only see the result, if it is yes or no, but we would provide you an explanation of why certain decision has been made. And we would also supplement this with a set of highlights, pointing out to specific parts of the document where you can see why the certain decision has been made, and verify it by yourself if this is a correct one or not. And I mentioned nested fields. This is a case where you can request more than one value for each document. And you can see on the right, we have a multiple option. So actually those things are independent, but yeah, you can choose the multiple option for the output. And in this case, it's not going to be just one single value, but can be the whole table of the values. So in this particular example, we would look into hospital discharge summaries, or like any other similar type of document, and would extract the name, dosage, and frequency of medications. Again, the instructions can be provided for each of these fields, and a result for each of those documents, you would get a table like you see on the right, with all the necessary information, again supplemented with all the supporting data like highlights and reasoning. And you can imagine that this can be applied not only for this use case, but to others as well, where for each document you need to extract information in a structured format, in the format of a table. Like there are numerous examples of those. Another thing Todd mentioned is that you need to do quality control, and Beagle, of course, provides tools for that. So what you can do is the validation flow, which works in both directions. You can either do the manual review process and then validate this using Beagle, or you can tag everything using Beagle and then do statistical sampling and validate this selected sample manually. And in the first case, well, actually, in both cases, we show you the differences, we show you two results side by side, and you can quickly look at the mismatches and understand which ones are correct, which ones are not. And this can be very useful for adjusting your prompt to improve your results further on. In the second case, you would choose what kind of metrics you need to look, and this could be recall, precision, illusion rates. We would sample that accordingly. You would choose what kind of margin of error you are ready to accept, what's the p-value, and we would sample you the documents accordingly, and you would get the results in this format like you see on the right side. Second thing is, of course, the confidential data processing. So, of course, we enable zero data retention, and we have such agreements with OpenAI, Microsoft Azure, and Anthropic. So Microsoft Azure at this point uses OpenAI models as well. However, OpenAI provides better limits, so it can just work faster with them. You are able to choose between the state-of-the-art models that these providers enable and make available for use. What it means is that whatever prompts you are sending, whatever documents are sent to the endpoints of those providers, and whatever responses are generated, they are not stored anywhere, and they are not available for human review, which is super important because obviously you don't want your documents to be seen by anyone. We are also working on supporting hosting of internal models. So in this case, we would just process everything within the private cloud that each workspace is hosted on, and the data won't leave this private cloud at all. We host everything in Microsoft Azure Cloud. And as I just mentioned, each workspace is hosted in its own private network, such that all the resources are separated. So there are no shared databases, no shared storages, nothing like this. And each time the new workspace is created, the new set of resources is created as well. And so there are no concerns on that side. We are also SOC 2 certified. We've conducted penetration tests and addressed all the issues there. So from the security point of view, we are also in a good standing. And finally, I wanted to mention that we also enable private cloud deployment, meaning that if you have your own Microsoft Azure environment, we can deploy Beagle in that environment. So in this case, you would have full access, full control of your data. You would also have full control of your resources, computational resources like storage, machines, and so on, and of course, billing as well. And on that, let me conclude the main part of our presentation. We are going to be at Legal Week at booth 3303. You can visit our website. You can follow us on LinkedIn. Please scan this QR code to schedule a meeting with me. And happy to see you at the Legal Week.
Well, fantastic. What a wonderful presentation. And we are so glad to learn more about our newest trusted partner, Beagle. Monica, would you like to handle any questions?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We have a question here. Can GenAI pull out and deliver to me what documents are useful to me in my side of the litigation or the other side, and why these documents are important? Sergey, would you like to answer that question?
Yes. So yes, it can. And as a rule of thumb, I think the AI at this stage is capable of doing pretty much any well-defined work, and well-defined work is important. So if like there is a clear task and there are documents that need to be looked at, we can assume that the AI is capable of doing like this, is making reasoning about these documents pretty much on the level that people are also capable of doing this. Like technically, it is possible if you feed all these documents one by one to the corresponding AI tool and provide again the information of what makes the document useful. So it means that you need to provide all the contents, all the context of the case. You probably need to provide additional information about like terms of like what is specific about this particular case, like what kind of maybe abbreviations, acronyms are used there if they are internal and not known to the LLM. So yeah, given that you provide all the necessary information and feed the required documents to the LM one by one, like not extending the context window of the machine, it is possible to get such a response. It's a separate question of how much this is going to cost. So again, probably you would need to filter out some of the documents if you don't want the cost to be too high, but yes, it is possible.
Thank you, Sergey. And I think we have time for one more question. Todd, that's for you. My e-discovery attorney is extremely passionate about AI and e-discovery, as are you. I think he'd benefit from speaking to Todd. What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, sure. Shoot me an email. I'm always happy to chat. I'm pretty accessible human being. Just shoot me an email. Always happy to chat.
Thank you, Todd. Mary, back to you.
Thanks, Monica. And we want to thank our wonderful trusted partner, Beagle, for making Monica, Todd, and Sergey available for this educational and provocative session. Our thanks to the EDRM community for your kind attention. If you enjoyed today's presentation, show Sergey and faculty some love. Check out those resources at the bottom of your console. Find the emojis, and if you really, really loved it, press the schedule a meeting button for your very own customized private demo. And we'll see you tomorrow on the EDRM Global Webinar channel. Thank you.